Commander Thelva stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the holographic display before him. His 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the sector map. The Helix Nebula border had been his latest conquest, and soon this entire region would belong to the Valkyrian Dominion. 300 years of expansion had made his people the masters of the galaxy. No species had ever stood against them for long. "Commander, we have detected a vessel at the edge of our scanning range," his sensor officer announced. The creature's voice carried the usual confidence of a Valkyrian warrior. Thelvis turned his attention to the new contact. A single ship? How typical. These border worlds always sent lone vessels to negotiate or plead for mercy. It saved time when they surrendered quickly. "What species?" he asked, already losing interest. "Unknown, Commander. The signature does not match any recorded civilization in our database." That made Thelvis pause. Unknown species were rare these days. The Dominion had catalogued almost every spacefaring race in the galaxy. Perhaps this was some primitive species just discovering faster than light travel. Those were always amusing to encounter. "Bring us closer. Deploy a standard intimidation formation. 15 cruisers should be sufficient." The bridge crew worked efficiently, and soon the Valkyrian fleet was moving toward the unknown vessel. As they approached, the sensors began gathering more data. Thelvis studied the readings with growing amusement. The ship was large, he would give them that. Perhaps 800 meters long. But the technology was laughably primitive. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. The hull appeared to be made of simple metal alloys, scarred and pitted as if the vessel had seen countless battles. Kinetic weapons dotted its surface along with what looked like missile tubes. Missile tubes! Who used missiles in modern warfare? They call themselves humans, the communications officer reported. "The ship's designation is UES Indomitable." Thelvis repeated the word slowly. "Humans, I have never heard of them. Have they responded to our hails?" "Negative, Commander. They maintain position and have not attempted to flee or communicate." Strange. Most species either ran or tried to negotiate when faced with Valkyrian might. This ship simply sat there in the black void of space, waiting. "Visual scan," Thelvas ordered. The main display flickered, showing the human vessel in detail. It was even more primitive than he had imagined. The hull was covered in thick armor plating, welded and riveted like some ancient warship from a forgotten age. Gun batteries protruded from every angle. The ship looked less like a modern spacecraft and more like a flying fortress built for one purpose only: war. Thelvas laughed, the sound echoing across the bridge. His crew joined in. This was the funniest thing they had seen in months. "Look at it," he said between laughs. "They built a ship out of scrap metal and call it a warship. These humans must be desperate indeed." Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Hyun sat in his command chair, watching the alien fleet approach on his own displays. His face showed no emotion, but his mind was calculating every possibility. 15 enemy vessels, each larger than his ship. Their technology was clearly advanced, with energy weapons and sophisticated shielding. "Lieutenant Minji analysis," he said calmly. The tactical officer worked her console quickly. Her fingers danced across the controls as data streamed past. "Captain, enemy ships are using standard energy-based weapon systems. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and directed energy projectors. Their shields appear designed to deflect energy attacks. Hull composition suggests lightweight materials optimized for speed and maneuverability." "Weaknesses?" Minji smiled slightly. "Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons, sir. Kinetic penetration capability appears minimal. Hull armor is thin. If we can get through their shields with solid projectiles, they will break like glass." Captain Hyun nodded slowly. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. While other species had advanced toward elegant energy weapons, humans had perfected the art of throwing things very, very fast. "Ensign Taeyang, have they made any demands yet?" The young communications officer checked his station. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady. "No, sir. They are still approaching. Formation suggests they expect us to surrender." "Of course they do," Captain Hyun said quietly. "They have never met humans before." "Chief Daehyun, reactor status?" From engineering, the chief's voice crackled over the intercom. "Running at optimal capacity, Captain. I can push us to 115% if needed, but I would not recommend it for more than 20 minutes. "Understood. All stations, battle readiness. Weapons Officer Jiwon, load all tubes. I want railguns charged and missile batteries armed. Full spread. Yes, sir. Jiwan's enthusiasm was clear even through the intercom. She had been waiting for this moment. The Valkyrian cruisers completed their encirclement. 15 ships now surrounded the lone human vessel. Thelvis prepared his standard surrender demand, the one he had given 1,000 times before. It always worked. Attention, unknown vessel. You have entered territory claimed by the Valkyrian Dominion. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with destruction. You have 30 seconds to comply. On the Indomitable's bridge, Ensign Taeyang relayed the message. Captain Hyun listened without expression. Around him, his crew waited for orders. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments and the distant hum of the ship's reactor. Open a channel, Hyun said finally. Channel open, sir. Captain Hyun leaned forward slightly. His voice was calm, almost conversational. Attention, Valkyrian vessels. You have entered human space. You have 10 seconds to withdraw. This is your only warning. Thelvis could not believe what he was hearing. He looked around his bridge at his crew, and they all shared expressions of shock and amusement. This primitive species was warning him? Him? Commander Thelvis, conqueror of 40 star systems? He laughed again, louder this time. They threaten us. These humans in their metal box think they can frighten the Valkyrian Dominion. How delightful. Weapons target their propulsion systems. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We will take this ship as a trophy. Yes, Commander. The Valkyrian cruisers powered up their weapons. Energy began gathering at multiple points across their hulls. On the Indomitable, warning alarms started beeping as targeting sensors locked onto the human ship. Lieutenant Minji looked up from her console. Captain, they are preparing to fire. Captain Hyun watched the countdown timer on his display. 10 seconds had passed. The aliens had made their choice. Very well, he said quietly. Weapons Officer Jiwan, you may fire when ready. There was a pause, just a heartbeat of silence. Then Jiwan's voice came back, filled with cold satisfaction. With pleasure, sir. Firing now. The Indomitable came alive. The universe exploded into violence. From every angle of the Indomitable, weapons fired simultaneously. Railgun turrets spun and launched tungsten slugs at 3% the speed of light. Missile tubes opened and released swarms of fusion-tipped warheads. Point defense lasers tracked and painted targets. Electromagnetic pulse cannons discharged with bursts of blue-white energy. Commander. Thelvis had exactly 2 seconds to register what was happening before his world became chaos. The first railgun slug hit the cruiser to his left. The Valkyrian ship's energy shields flared bright blue, designed to disperse plasma and particle beams. But the solid projectile did not care about energy shields. It passed through the barrier as if it were not there at all. The tungsten slug, traveling at 9,000 kilometers per second, struck the cruiser's hull and punched straight through. The alien ship buckled. Metal screamed. Atmosphere vented into space in explosive bursts. The cruiser's reactor, compromised by the impact, went critical. A brilliant explosion lit up the void as the vessel disintegrated into spinning fragments. 2 seconds later, 3 more cruisers died the same way. Evasive maneuvers. Thelvis screamed, his composure shattered. Return fire! Return fire! But the Valkyrian ships were not built for this kind of combat. Their elegant designs prioritized speed and grace. They relied on shields to protect them from energy attacks. Now they faced something their technology had never been optimized to counter. Simple, brutal kinetic force. Missiles reached the Valkyrian formation. Smart weapons with primitive but effective guidance systems. They did not try to penetrate shields with exotic technology. Instead, they simply exploded when they got close enough. Nuclear warheads detonated in brilliant flashes, and the electromagnetic pulses disrupted Valkyrian systems. Ships went dark as their computers crashed. Shields flickered and failed. More railgun rounds found their targets. Sub-Commander Krell, Thelvis's second-in-command, watched in horror as another cruiser broke apart. He had served in the Dominion fleet for 60 years. He had seen countless battles. Never, not once, had he witnessed such devastating firepower from a single vessel. Commander, we must retreat, he shouted over the alarms blaring throughout the bridge. Our weapons cannot penetrate their armor at this range, and our shields are useless against kinetic weapons. Thelvis stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. His invincible fleet was being torn apart by a ship he had mocked just minutes ago. How was this possible? These were primitives. They used missiles and bullets. The Indomitable did not maneuver like Valkyrian ships. It did not dance gracefully through space. Instead, it pivoted with powerful thrusters and charged forward like an ancient battleship, ramming an enemy fleet. Its thick armor absorbed the few energy blasts that hit it. Scorch marks appeared on the hull, but the metal held. On the human ship's bridge, Lieutenant Minji called out targets with mechanical precision. Starboard battery, target the command ship. Port battery, focus fire on the cruisers attempting to flank. Missile tubes 3 through 8, reload and prepare for second volley. Captain Hyun watched the battle unfold on his displays. His face remained calm, but inside he felt the weight of command. Each decision meant life or death, not just for his crew, but for the future of humanity's place in this galaxy. Status report, he ordered. 8 enemy vessels destroyed, Minji reported. 2 crippled and drifting. 5 attempting to retreat. Hull integrity at 94%. Shields holding. Ammunition at 70%. Continue firing. Target the ships trying to escape. We cannot let them report our full capabilities. Yes, sir. Chief Engineer Daehyun's voice crackled over the intercom, competing with the sound of his own engines. Captain, reactor is running hot but stable. We can maintain this output for another 15 minutes before I need to cycle down. Acknowledged. Make it last, Chief. Weapons Officer Ji-won laughed as another railgun volley obliterated a Valkyrian cruiser. These aliens never stood a chance, Captain. Their ships are too delicate. It is like shooting paper targets. Stay focused, Ji-won, Hyun said sharply. Overconfidence kills. They are learning our tactics right now. The next battle will be harder. He was right. Aboard Thelvas's flagship, Sub-Commander Krell had taken operational command. He barked orders quickly, trying to salvage what he could from this disaster. All remaining ships scatter and retreat. Use random evasion patterns. Do not fly in straight lines. Communications broadcast emergency signal to Fleet Command. Priority Alpha. We need reinforcements and we need them now. Ensign Taiyang intercepted the alien transmissions. His translation software worked overtime, parsing the Valkyrian language. Captain, they are calling for help. They are describing our weapons, our tactics, everything they have seen. Can you jam their signal? No, sir. They are using quantum-entangled communicators. The signal cannot be interrupted. Captain Hyun considered this. The element of surprise was gone now. Soon, every alien species in this sector would know about human weapons, about human warships. That changed everything. Let them talk, he decided. Let them tell their leaders what happened here. Maybe it will make the next ones think twice before attacking us. The remaining Valkyrian ships fled into faster-than-light jumps, disappearing in flashes of distorted space-time. The battle was over. The Indomitable sat alone among the debris field, surrounded by the wreckage of alien vessels. On Thelvas's flagship, which had survived only because Krell had ordered the retreat quickly enough, the commander sat slumped in his chair. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. He had led 15 cruisers against a single enemy vessel and lost 10 ships in less than 5 minutes. Krell looked at his superior with a mixture of pity and contempt. You underestimated them, Commander. You saw primitive technology and assumed primitive minds. That was your mistake. Thelva said nothing. What could he say? The evidence floated all around them in the debris field. Krell turned to his communications officer. Send a personal message to High Counselor Ven. Mark it urgent. Tell him we have encountered a new species. Tell him they are dangerous. Tell him they fight like nothing we have ever seen before. What should I call them in the report? The officer asked. Krell looked at the data streaming across his console. Information about the human ship. About human weapons. About human tactics. He thought about the cold, emotionless voice of the human captain giving his warning. 10 seconds to withdraw. That was all they had offered. No negotiation. No hesitation. Call them what they are, Krell said quietly. Warriors. Born and bred for war. The humans are warriors, and we just made them our enemy. Back aboard the Indomitable, Captain Hyun stood and stretched. His back ached from sitting in the command chair during the battle. Around him, his crew began damage control procedures and systems checks. Good work, everyone, he said simply. Lieutenant Minji, compile a full battle report. Ensign Taeyang, send a message to Fleet Command. Inform Admiral Seojin of our situation. Tell him we won, but they will be back in greater numbers. Yes, sir, both officers replied. Hyun walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien fleet was retreating to their territory. They would tell their leaders about this battle, and then humanity would face the consequences of their first contact with galactic civilization. He had known this day would come eventually. Humanity had been exploring and expanding for decades, always careful to avoid contact with advanced species. But the galaxy was a crowded place. Sooner or later, someone would find them. And now someone had Captain Hyun touch the cold metal of the viewport with one hand. The Indomitable had been built for this exact purpose. A warship designed to send a message. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would fight. The message had been delivered. Now they would see if anyone was listening. The Valkyrian staging ground orbited a barren moon in the outer reaches of their territory. Dozens of ships floated in formation, undergoing repairs and resupply. When Subcommander Krell's battered task force emerged from faster-than-light travel, every vessel in the staging ground turned their sensors toward them. The damage was obvious even from a distance. 5 cruisers instead of 15. Hull plating torn away, scorch marks everywhere. One ship trailing atmosphere from a dozen puncture wounds. Krell sat on the bridge of what had been Thelvas's flagship, though the commander himself was confined to quarters, disgraced, broken. Krell had assumed command and now faced the uncomfortable task of explaining their defeat to the Dominion leadership. "Open a channel to High Counselor Ven," he ordered. The holographic display shimmered and the image of Ven appeared. The High Counselor was a tall Valkyrian with ceremonial markings denoting his rank. His 6 eyes studied Krell with cold intelligence. "Subcommander, I received your emergency transmission. 15 cruisers against 1 vessel. You lost 10 ships. Explain." Krell took a breath. "High Counselor, we encountered a species that does not fight like anyone we have faced before. They call themselves humans. Their technology appears primitive on the surface, but their application of that technology is devastatingly effective." "Show me." Krell transmitted the battle data. Video recordings from multiple angles, sensor logs showing the weapons discharge, damage reports from the surviving ships. Ven watched it all in silence. When the footage finished, Ven was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "They use kinetic weapons, solid projectiles, like something from a pre-spaceflight civilization." "Yes, High Counselor, but these are not simple bullets. Their railguns launch projectiles at 3% of light speed. Our shields cannot stop them. Our armor cannot withstand them. And they have thousands of these weapons on a single ship." Ven leaned forward. "Analysis suggests their missiles use nuclear fusion warheads. Crude but effective. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted our systems." He paused. "They designed their weapons specifically to counter shielded vessels. How did a newly discovered species develop such specialized technology? I do not believe they are newly spacefaring," Krell said carefully. Their ship showed signs of extensive combat experience. The hull was scarred from many battles. "These humans have been fighting someone, High Counselor, fighting for a long time. They have perfected the art of war." Meanwhile, in human territory, Admiral Seojin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defender. Around him, 11 more human warships floated in formation. Each vessel was similar to the Indomitable in design. Heavy armor, kinetic weapons, missile batteries. Ships built for one purpose. "Admiral, Captain Hyun's battle report confirms our tactical assessments," an officer reported. "The Valkyrian ships were vulnerable to kinetic penetration. Their energy-based doctrine has made them overconfident." Seojin nodded slowly. He was an older man, with gray hair and a scarred face from decades of service. He had fought in the colony wars. He had seen the worst of human conflict. Now he commanded humanity's first line of defense against alien threats. "They will come back," he said quietly. "And next time they will bring more ships. They will adapt their tactics. We hurt their pride today. Should we pursue them into their territory? No, we defend our borders. We do not start wars, but we will finish them." Seojin turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to Earth. Inform the Council that first contact has occurred. Inform them it was not peaceful. Request authorization to mobilize the reserve fleet." On a human science vessel operating near the battle site, Dr. Youngmi examined pieces of Valkyrian wreckage her team had recovered. She was a xenobiologist, but today she was studying alien technology. The Valkyrian systems were elegant, energy conduits made from crystalline structures, computer cores that operated on quantum principles. weapon systems that could generate plasma from ambient particles. It was beautiful engineering. But as she studied the wreckage, young Mi noticed something important. The hull materials were lightweight composites, strong enough to handle energy impacts but thin. She calculated the kinetic resistance and shook her head in amazement. "These ships are designed for a completely different kind of warfare," she said to her assistant. "They have never faced sustained kinetic bombardment. Their entire military doctrine is based on energy exchanges at range. So we have an advantage, for now. But they will adapt. Intelligence always adapts." Young Mi looked at the alien technology spread before her. "We need to understand their capabilities fully. Send everything we have learned to Fleet Command, and tell them to prepare for a larger engagement." Back in Valkyrian space, High Counselor Ven convened the Dominion Council. Representatives from all 6 species appeared via hologram. The chamber was tense. "We have encountered a new species," Ven began without preamble. "They defeated our ships with primitive technology applied in sophisticated ways. The question before us is simple. Do we crush them now or do we negotiate?" "Crush them," one counselor shouted. "We cannot show weakness. The Dominion has never retreated from an inferior species." "Are they inferior?" another counselor asked. "They destroyed 10 of our cruisers with a single vessel. That suggests tactical superiority regardless of their technology level." The debate raged for hours. Some wanted immediate military action. Others urged caution. A few even suggested opening diplomatic channels. Finally, Ven raised his hand for silence. "We will vote. But first I want everyone to watch the battle footage again. Watch carefully. See how the humans fight. See their weapons. See their ship. And then ask yourselves, do we want to fight a war against an entire civilization that builds vessels like that?" The footage played again on the central display. This time, the counselors paid closer attention. They noticed details they had missed before. The way the human ship absorbed damage without slowing. The precision of their targeting. The cold efficiency of their tactics. When it ended, Ven called for the vote. "All in favor of immediate military action?" 4 counselors raised their appendages. 2 abstained. "Very well. We will mobilize a battle fleet. 300 ships. We will show these humans the true might of the Valkyrian Dominion, and we will erase them from this sector of space." Ven closed the council session and sat alone in his chamber. He looked at the battle footage one more time, studying the human warship. Something about it troubled him. The way it moved. The way it fought. There was a determination there, a refusal to yield that reminded him of stories from his own species' history. Stories of wars that had nearly destroyed their civilization before they learned to control their aggression. He opened a private channel to his intelligence chief. "I want everything you can find about these humans. Where they come from. How many worlds they control. How many ships they have. Everything." "Yes, High Counselor." "And one more thing," Ven added quietly. "Find out if they have ever fought each other. I want to know if these humans have experience in total war." The intelligence chief paused. "Why does that matter, High Counselor?" Ven looked at the frozen image of the Indomitable on his display. Battle-scarred, heavily armed, built for war. Because if they have fought each other and survived, then they know things about warfare that we may have forgotten in 300 years of easy conquests. And that makes them far more dangerous than we realize. 3 weeks later, the Valkyrian armada arrived. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Helix Nebula. Cruisers, destroyers, battleships, and carriers. The largest military force the Dominion had assembled in 50 years. Warmaster Zeth commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel bristling with plasma cannons and particle beam projectors. Zeth was a legendary figure in Valkyrian military circles. He had conquered 12 systems personally. He had never lost a battle. Now he stood on his bridge, studying the human defensive positions with cold calculation. 47 human vessels, his tactical officer reported. Defensive platforms scattered throughout the nebula. Possible minefields. They have prepared well. Zeth nodded approvingly. At least these primitives understand they are about to die. They deserve that much respect. "All ships advance in formation." Destroy their platforms first, then their ships. I want this over quickly. The massive Valkyrian fleet began its approach. On the human side, Admiral Seojun watched the enemy armada with a grim expression. 47 ships against 300. The numbers were brutal. But numbers were not everything. Commodore Jamin, status of the carrier wings, he ordered. From the UES Horizon's End, a dedicated carrier vessel, Commodore Jamin responded. All drone squadrons ready for launch, Admiral. 3,000 autonomous units armed and operational. Fighter wings standing by. Good. Hold position until they enter the engagement zone. Captain Yun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, which had been repaired and resupplied. His crew was ready. They knew what was coming. Lieutenant Minji, confirm all automated systems are online, he said calmly. Confirmed, Captain. Defense platforms active. Minefields armed. Railgun stations reporting ready. We have prepared this battlefield for 3 weeks. They are walking into a trap. Hyun allowed himself a small smile. Then let us spring it. The Valkyrian fleet advanced confidently. They had overwhelming numbers. What could 47 primitive ships do against 300 advanced warships? They were about to find out. The first mines detonated when the Valkyrian vanguard entered the dense gas clouds of the nebula. Nuclear explosions lit up space, creating massive radiation bursts. The electromagnetic pulses scrambled Valkyrian sensors and communications. Ships that had been in perfect formation suddenly lost coordination. What is happening? War Master Zeth demanded. Report. Mines, War Master, hidden in the nebula's gas clouds. Our sensors cannot penetrate the radiation. We are blind. Before Zeth could respond, the human defense platforms opened fire. Hidden among asteroids and debris, dozens of automated railgun stations began launching projectiles into the confused Valkyrian formation. Ships died before they could locate the source of the attacks. Return fire. Target those platforms. But the platforms were small, armored, and scattered. The Valkyrians' elegant energy weapons struggled to destroy them quickly. Meanwhile, more human weapons came online. Commodore Jamin gave the order. Launch all drones. Authorization code accepted. Execute swarm protocol. From the Horizon's End and 3 other carrier vessels, thousands of small autonomous drones poured into space. Each drone was simple, a guidance system, a kinetic warhead, and a small thruster. No shields, no weapons beyond the warhead itself, just enough intelligence to identify a target and crash into it. The drone swarm descended on the Valkyrian fleet like angry insects. They ignored energy fire. They dodged between larger ships. They moved in coordinated patterns, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer numbers. War Master Zeth watched in growing fury as drones slammed into his ships. Each impact was small, but thousands of small impacts added up. Armor buckled. Hulls breached. Ships lost maneuvering capability. Deploy fighters to intercept those drones. Yes, War Master. But the humans had fighters too. Lieutenant Commander Soman led her wing through the chaos, targeting Valkyrian command ships. Her fighter was small and fast, armed with missiles and a single railgun. Not elegant, not sophisticated, but deadly. Red Squadron, follow my lead. Target their flagship. Let us show these aliens what human pilots can do. Her squadron dove through the swirling battle, dodging energy fire and debris. They launched their missiles in coordinated salvos, overwhelming the flagship's defenses. Explosions rippled across Zeth's vessel and the bridge shook violently. Status report, Zeth shouted over the alarms. Hull breaches on decks 5 through 12. Weapon systems failing. Engines at 60%. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. Zeth had expected a desperate last stand. Instead, the humans had turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. Every advantage the Valkyrians had brought, superior numbers, advanced technology, better ships, meant nothing in this environment. Admiral Seo-jun watched the tactical display from the Defender. The battle was going according to plan, but the cost was high. Human ships were dying too. Each loss hurt, but he could not afford to think about that now. Order all vessels to focus fire on their command ships. Take out their leadership. Make them afraid. Captain Hyun maneuvered the Indomitable through the battle, his ship's thick armor absorbing hit after hit. Weapons Officer Jiwon, target that battleship. Full missile spread. With pleasure, Captain. The Indomitable unleashed hell. Dozens of missiles streaked toward a Valkyrian battleship, followed by railgun fire. The enemy vessel's shields held for a moment, then collapsed under the sustained bombardment. The ship broke apart in a massive explosion. War Master Zeth realized the truth in that moment. He was not fighting primitives. He was fighting a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing each other, before they ever reached the stars. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy had been tested in countless human wars. This was not their first battle. This was just their first battle against aliens, and they were winning. All ships fall back. Zeth ordered, the words painful to speak. Reform at Rally Point Delta. We need to regroup. But pulling 300 ships out of a chaotic battlefield was not easy. The human weapons continued firing. Drones continued swarming. Mines continued detonating. By the time the Valkyrian fleet managed to retreat beyond the nebula's edge, they had lost over 180 vessels, nearly 2/3 of their fleet. Gone. In less than 3 hours. Zeth sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the casualty reports in disbelief. How had this happened? Sub-Commander Krell, watching the battle data from the staging ground, knew the answer. The humans had not fought fair. They had not met the Valkyrians in honorable ship-to-ship combat. Instead, they had prepared the battlefield. They had used every dirty trick, every ambush, every advantage. They had fought like humans. On the Indomitable, Captain Hyun surveyed his own damage reports. 14 human ships destroyed, 23 damaged, thousands of crew members dead. The victory had been costly, but it had been a victory. Send a message to all ships, he said quietly. Well done. We have held the line. Admiral Seojin knew the war was not over. The Valkyrians would regroup. They would adapt. But today, humanity had proven something important. They had shown the galaxy that humans could not be easily defeated, that humans would fight for every inch of space, that humans, despite their primitive technology, were a force to be respected and feared. The wreckage field stretched for thousands of kilometers, broken ships, debris, bodies floating in the eternal dark. Captain Hyun walked slowly through the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking out at the aftermath of the battle. His reflection stared back at him from the viewport, and he barely recognized the tired face he saw. Captain, Admiral Seojin requests your presence in the conference room, Lieutenant Minji said softly behind him. Hyun nodded without turning around. Thank you, Lieutenant. I will be there shortly. When she left, he remained at the viewport for another moment. 14 ships lost, over 3,000 human crew members dead. He knew many of them personally, had served with some for years. Now they were gone, their bodies drifting among the wreckage. Victory had a price. It always did. Admiral Seojin had set up a temporary command center on the Defender. When Hyun arrived, he found the Admiral studying holographic projections of the battle. Other captains were present via video link, including Commodore Jamin and Lieutenant Commander Soman. Captain Hyun, Seojin greeted him. Your ship fought well, again. Thank you, Admiral. My crew deserves the credit. Seojin gestured to the projections. We won the battle, but the war is far from over. The Valkyrians will request a ceasefire soon. Their pride is wounded, and they have lost too many ships to continue immediately. But they will not forget this. What are our orders? Commodore Jamin asked. We wait, we repair, we prepare. Seojin looked at each officer in turn. But we also send a message, not just to the Valkyrians, but to every species in this galaxy. Humanity is here. We will not surrender. We will not bow. Attack us at your own risk. In Valkyrian space, High Counselor Ven convened an emergency session of the Dominion Council. The mood was somber. The battle reports were catastrophic. Nearly 200 ships destroyed. War Master Zeth injured and his flagship crippled. The Dominion had not suffered such losses in living memory. We underestimated them, Ven said simply. Again, despite Sub-Commander Krell's warnings. Despite the footage from the first engagement. We thought numbers would be enough. We were wrong. One counselor spoke up angrily. We should mobilize our entire fleet. Show these humans what happens when they defy the Dominion. And lose how many more ships? Another counselor countered. How many more lives? The humans fight from prepared positions. They use their environment. They sacrifice willingly. This is not a species that will break easily. Ven raised his hand for silence. I have reviewed all intelligence on the humans. I have studied their history. And I have learned something disturbing. These humans have only been a united species for less than a century. Before that, they fought each other, constantly, for thousands of years. They have more experience in warfare than any species in the Dominion. The council chamber was silent. They know things about war that we have forgotten, Ven continued. They know how to fight when outnumbered. They know how to use terrain. They know how to make every weapon count, because they have been doing it to each other since before they discovered fire. "What are you proposing, High Counselor?" someone asked quietly. "A ceasefire, negotiations, peace if possible. Because if we continue this war, we will win eventually through sheer numbers. But the cost will be enormous. And we will create an enemy that will never forgive, never forget, and never stop seeking revenge." The vote was close, but it passed. The Dominion would offer peace. War Master Zeth was brought before Admiral Seogen 3 days later. The Valkyrian warrior had been rescued from his damaged flagship by human recovery teams. He stood now in the Defender's conference room, his ceremonial armor dented and scorched, his pride wounded but his bearing still defiant. Seogen studied him across the table. "Two old warriors meeting for the first time. I expected you to kill me," Zeth said finally in translated speech. "Why would I do that?" Seogen asked. "You fought for your people. I respect that. We may be enemies, but we are both soldiers. We understand duty." Zeth was silent for a moment. "I have conquered 12 systems. I have led fleets to victory on 100 battlefields. Never have I been defeated so completely. Your people fight like demons." "No," Seogen corrected gently. "We fight like humans. There is a difference. Demons enjoy destruction. Humans do not. We fight because we must. Because surrender is not in our nature. Because we learned long ago that the only way to survive is to be willing to do whatever it takes." He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the debris field. "We did not want this war. We wanted to be left alone, to explore, to build, to learn. But you came to our borders with warships and demands. You gave us no choice." Zeth followed his gaze. "What happens now?" "Now we see if your leaders are wise enough to accept peace. If they are, we will negotiate. If they are not, we will continue fighting, and we will keep fighting until either you leave us alone or one of us is destroyed." Seogen turned back to face Zeth. "Make no mistake, War Master. If we must, we will burn your empire to ashes, not because we want to, but because we have learned that sometimes survival requires terrible things." The Valkyrian warrior nodded slowly. For the first time in his long career, he understood what it meant to face an enemy that would never quit. Admiral Seogen authorized the broadcast 3 days later. It went out on all frequencies, transmitted to every corner of known space. The message was simple, but the implications were profound. Captain Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as the broadcast played. His face appeared on screens across the galaxy as he spoke calmly into the camera. "This is Captain Hyun of the United Earthship Indomitable. I speak on behalf of humanity. 3 weeks ago we were attacked without provocation by vessels of the Valkyrian Dominion. We defended ourselves. We will always defend ourselves. The footage showed the battles. Not propaganda. Not edited highlights. Just raw combat footage. Human ships taking damage. Alien vessels being destroyed. The brutal reality of modern warfare. Humanity seeks peace with all species," Yun continued. "We wish to trade, to learn, to share knowledge. But we will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not bow to threats. Attack us and we will respond with every weapon at our disposal. We may use technology you consider primitive, but do not mistake simplicity for weakness." The camera pulled back to show the Indomitable floating in space, its hull scarred, but intact. Around it, the human fleet was visible, dozens of warships, each one a testament to human determination. "This is our message to the galaxy," Hyun finished. "We are humanity. We are here, and we are not going anywhere." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species that had been considering expansion into human territory reconsidered. The Valkyrian Dominion formally requested a ceasefire, which Admiral Seogen accepted. Negotiations began. In his private quarters, Captain Hyun sat alone, looking at photos of crew members who had died in the battles. Each face was a memory. Each loss was a weight on his soul. Ensign Taeyang, now promoted to lieutenant for his service, knocked on the door. "Captain, Admiral Seogen has approved our resupply requests. The Indomitable will be fully operational again in 2 weeks." "Good. Thank you, Lieutenant." Taeyang hesitated. "Captain, do you think they will come back?" "The Valkyrians?" Hyun was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. But if they do, we will be ready. We will always be ready." Lieutenant Minji submitted her final battle report to Fleet Command. In it, she made several recommendations for future engagements. Better coordination between drone squadrons, improved mine deployment strategies, enhanced communication systems. The list was long, but she also noted something important. Human tactics had proven effective not because they were superior, but because they were unexpected. The next battle would be harder. Enemies would adapt. Humanity could not rely on surprise forever. Weapons Officer G1 oversaw the installation of new railgun batteries on the Indomitable. The engineers worked quickly, replacing damaged systems and upgrading others. The ship would be stronger than before, deadlier. She thought about the aliens they had killed, thousands of them. She felt no joy in it, but no regret either. It was her job, her duty. She protected humanity by being better at war than anyone else. Admiral Seojin stood in the shipyard watching new vessels under construction. The keel of the UES Vigilance was being laid. Nearby, work continued on the UES Mercy and UES Justice. Each ship was larger than the Indomitable. Each carried more weapons, more armor, more capacity for war, because Seojin knew the truth. Peace only lasted as long as humanity was strong enough to defend it. He received a message from Earth. The Council congratulated him on his victory and authorized expansion of the fleet. Humanity would build 100 more warships, then 200. They would colonize more systems, establish stronger borders, make themselves too dangerous to attack, not because they wanted war, but because they understood the galaxy better now. They understood that out here among the stars, strength was the only language everyone spoke. Captain Hyun returned to the viewport as he often did. He looked out at the stars and thought about the future. What would humanity become out here? Would they stay true to their ideals, or would they become like the aliens they fought? Aggressive, expansionist, ruthless? He did not know. But he knew his duty. To protect humanity. To give them a chance to find out.